What's happening, Wimbledon winners? So, I wanted to do a video for you this week because I keep seeing things on Facebook and it's really starting to irritate me. Now, what I keep seeing all the time is, how can you use a phone with no Google? Yeah, I would love this phone, but it has no Google. No Google, no Google, no Google. And it's starting to get on my nerves. Because when people say no Google, what do they actually mean? When you break it down to what services do you think that you would be losing out on if you were to purchase a phone or a tablet with no Google, with no GMS, what does that actually mean to you? What does that translate as? What categories of having no GMS do you think you're going to be affected by? So I thought I'd break it down to categories to make it easy for someone who's maybe considering purchasing a device with no GMS on it to see whether they're actually going to be affected or whether they're just buying into the hype of no Google. So first on the no Google list is browsing. So do some people assume that you cannot browse the internet because there is no Google? Because if that's the case, you absolutely can. You can use Chrome browser, you can use Firefox, you can use Opera browser, you can use whatever browser you want. A browser is just a browser. It's an application for browsing the internet and therefore is not restricted by your access to Google. So if you want to use Firefox browser to be able to search Google homepage for whatever it is you want to look for, you can. Nothing has changed for you there. So if it's browsing the internet, you can do it. Second on the no Google list is Google search, right? So when people say, oh, but I search on Google all the time, what they quite often mean is that little Google search bar that's on your home screen. So if people say, well, I don't have that anymore, I can kind of understand where you're coming from. But again, what that actually is an extension of Google search and quite possibly an extension of your browser. So here's an example of how you could fix that. If you install Firefox, Firefox allows you to add a widget to your home screen like this. And that means then that you can just tap in that box and you can search on Google for whatever it is you want. Pretty straightforward. So there actually is your answer to that one. Third on the no Google list is Gmail. Now, if you assume that if you have a non-GMS device you cannot use your Gmail address, you're wrong. You'll be glad to know. Because your Gmail address is just an email address like any other. Therefore, you don't have to specifically put it into the Gmail app. You can add it to any email application on any device and it will work as normal. Therefore, if you buy a Huawei, you can add it into the email application on there. If you buy a Samsung, you can add it onto the email application on there. Or you can use something like the Outlook application, which I've been using, and that means then you get other features like calendar synchronization, which is pretty handy. Your Gmail account is just another email account. It doesn't have to be added to a Google GMS device to actually work. You can add it onto any device and it'll work just as normal. So in regard to actual apps that are approved and made by Google, this I can kind of understand. There are actually Google apps that you might use that if you can't use these on a HMS device, you might say to yourself, well, maybe that's not the device for me. And that's fine. However, don't get caught up too quick because things like YouTube, for example, works perfectly fine through the browser. So you could just log on to youtube.com through your browser, create a shortcut on your home screen, and from there you can use YouTube no problem. Sign into your account, and if you pay for YouTube Premium, you'll get all the same features there. Job done. Then there's Google Drive. So any device that you have the Google Drive app on means that it will synchronize all of your files and folders across to be able to access on any device. Now if you say, well, I can't install this, you'd be correct. You can't install Google Drive on a HMS device. But what you can do instead is store things in your Huawei cloud and access it on any Huawei device. So HMS has the exact same solution. And then you can actually just log into your Huawei ID. So you nip into settings, up the top, click on where it says your name, that's your Huawei ID, and you can see everything that's stored onto your Huawei cloud profile. So there's your solution. Log into your Huawei ID and you can store files into the files section, which will go up in the cloud and be accessible through any device. Easy. And lastly in the Google apps is Google Photos. So I know a lot of people do use Google Photos for the free unlimited storage, which is extremely handy. However, what I would say there is Huawei storage is also pretty handy as well. So if you go for a HMS device, what you may find then is just actually moving your photos across into your Huawei ID will actually synchronize them across all your new devices, and you may even find that it's more of an improvement because it's using the same gallery that you're used to. So therefore you're not having to get used to two different layouts. Plus there are some pretty sweet deals on the storage as well. So if you want to increase yourself up to 2 terabytes, it's not that bad. So finally, we'll look at the Google Cloud, or Cloud as most people call it. Now, the Google Cloud doesn't really exist as something that you would use, but if you say, well, all my stuff is in the Google Cloud, what were you doing before this? And could you possibly move it across to another service that doesn't tie you down to specific devices? So what I mean by that is if you say to yourself, what's in my Google Cloud? It's your photos, your contacts, it's your files and documents and so on. It's the stuff we've already been talking about in these videos. Now, if you say to yourself, I'm really thinking of going from a HMS device, all you have to do is move the stuff from your cloud to your Huawei cloud, and it's done. It's dead straightforward. Depending on how much you have in the cloud, this may be really, really simple and straightforward and take you 2 seconds, or it might take you an hour of your time on a PC. It's not that big a deal though, really, to be able to say that you can have the best device on the market with the best camera, and all you have to do is just change from one cloud service to another. That's not that big a deal. And if you think about it, the amount of people that move from iCloud devices where they have their things in the cloud across to an Android device, even if that's a GMS device, you're still moving stuff from one cloud to another, and that's never been a big deal before in the past. So why is it now? The answer to that is because the news and the media has made you feel like it's a massive deal. So when people say these devices are no good because they have no Google, what do they mean? And I would ask the exact same thing to anyone watching this video. If you feel that the new Huawei devices are affected by not having Google on them, what does that mean to you specifically? What do you feel that you will be affected by if you move to this device? That's my challenge. Tell me what it is that you will lose out on, and I'll tell you if there's an alternative. That's it, that's my roundup. So, the title of this video was a little bit catchy because yes, it does say, can you use a phone without Google? And that's because the perception is that these phones cannot access Google in any way, and this isn't the case. So hopefully this video has taught you something. If you've liked the video, please leave a like. If you didn't like the video, don't leave a like. Don't leave a dislike though, because that's just for losers. But also, if you like it, watch it again. And if you didn't like it, watch it again. You might like it the second time. Yes. That's all. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. See you later. Bye.